about 11, going on 12 years old when my father died. We were just granted custody, and so he was our dad again for about 6 months. And he died of a massive heart attack a day before my birthday. I was away from him during that time. I was actually in Charlotte, and he was staying in McBee, South Carolina. And I remember talking to him over the phone, and we had this thing where we never said goodbye because that was forever. And I remember him telling me how important being 12 was going to be and how it was such a memorable experience and how he was so excited to spend that day with me. And I remember at the end of that conversation, we kept going back and forth because I kept saying bye. And, and he would say, no, say see you later. And I would say, okay, see you later, bye, see you later, bye. I was so excited about the next day that I didn't even realize that my last words to him were bye, which was forever. My father's death, it happened so suddenly, like we were just getting used to being his daughters again. And because it was around the time of my birthday, I think I almost selfishly was upset with him because I wasn't able to celebrate that time in my life after being reunited with my family again. So I just remember just being in a daze almost. Everything just seemed to pass by. I definitely was grieving, but I don't think I knew a healthy way to grieve until maybe my adult years.
You know, I haven't really had a lot of experience with death, but I can remember my great-grandmother going to her funeral, and I was young. I was young, and I do remember that. And I've had other relatives die, but I didn't attend the funerals because I didn't know them real well, or I felt really uncomfortable going.
Mi papi se murió, tuvo como unos 3 días en el hospital, estaba muy mal, tuvo un accidente, se golpeó la cabeza, quedó mal. A los 3 días él murió y yo estaba ahí. Lo que te puedo decir es el olor. El olor es de lo más que uno recuerda. El olor del hospital, las luces del hospital y el olor al... Ay, ¿cómo se llama? Cuando te ponen... Cuando te... ese líquido. Formol. Ese es un olor indescriptible. Es el olor de la muerte. Porque todo el hospital, cuando ya te le llevan al cadáver, le comienzan a formalizar. Yo tenía 28 años cuando mi padre murió. Estaba inconsciente, solamente sentirle la piel como que suda, pero ese sudor frío, un color amarillo, un color totalmente opaco. Eso es lo que uno me impacta. Y luego ya es tan rápido que tienes que tratar de vestirle, llevar a que le vistan, a que le pongan su traje. No tienes tiempo ese momento de llorar ni de quejarte, porque tienes que hacerlo, tienes que hacer rápido. Para al día siguiente comenzar a hacer ¿cómo se llama? Para velarle. Le llevan a la sala de velación, se queda un día ahí y luego ya lo llevan a enterrar. Por ejemplo, mi papá le enterraron donde la mamá y el día del entierro ahí lloré, porque no había, estaba mi mamá, mis hermanas y teníamos que todos ser fuertes y comenzar a hacer, porque mi papá nunca, jamás dijo, bueno, ¿qué es lo que quiero? Ese momento a buscar dinero para, tú sabes que es caro. Sí. Buscar el espacio y entonces eso, por eso digo, hay que ser organizado en todo y saber qué es lo que quieres, sí. ¿Qué es y el dinero, porque no es justo que tú sabiendo que vas a morirte dejes la responsabilidad a otras personas, cuando tú eres responsable de eso también. Tienes que ser responsable en todo, saber más o menos qué es lo que deseas y de dónde van a sacar dinero o quién te puede ayudar. Pero cuando sucede así de un rato para otro y no estás preparado, Entonces, sí necesitas una persona que te ayude, que sea tu apoyo.
My first encounter with death would have to be with my grandmother on my father's side. I didn't know at the time, but she had colon cancer. I was about 5 years old when it had progressed. One thing I do remember, and that's pretty young before you could really formulate memories, but she would always have a drawer full of Reese's cups for me when I went over to the house. Always, every time I went over, same drawer, same place. She always kept the Reese's cups there. But so when I was about 5 years old, she passed. I wasn't at a point where I really could understand death. I barely remember the funeral. I remember going up to the casket and seeing her laying there, looking as I remember her to this day. I kissed her on the forehead, but it wasn't until many years later that I actually understood the permanence of death, I guess I would say. The next person in my close family that did pass was my grandfather, my grandmother's husband, which was probably about 15, 16 years later, something like that. But when he passed, I was probably around 21 years old, and I definitely had years full of memories with this grandfather. And the way I coped and processed and grieved was something completely new compared to my previous encounter with death. It was something that I could understand at this moment. I was at a point where I understood that he was gone, and I understood the effect him being gone would have on my father, having lost both parents, and being in that situation, and just having that much life experience, it hit a lot harder. And coping and grieving was, I guess that was the first time I really did with a close family member, but not just for their loss, but for the loss that my father had as well. And it took time, but we celebrated his life, and we all got through it.
Bueno, la primera experiencia muy fuerte con la muerte fue a los 31 años. Mi mamá falleció de cáncer en la garganta y esto fue en 3 meses. Le dio gripa y no se le quitó. Y fue un doctor, fue a otro, le dijeron que se le rompió la cuerda vocal, que no pasaba nada, hasta que con el tiempo ella pensó que a lo mejor estaba pasando algo más drástico y fue con otro doctor y ya le hicieron análisis y tenía cáncer en la garganta. Entonces, bueno, esa fue la muerte más dolorosa y mi primera experiencia con la muerte.
Has to be my dad, who recently died about 14 years ago. That was difficult because I was with him when he died. Me and my dad, really close. He smoked all his life, lucky strike. I still have the cigarettes that he had in his pocket the day they took him to the hospital. And they diagnosed him with lung cancer, which had metastasized to his liver, and in 2 weeks, he was gone. I came up on a Friday, and I visited him on Friday. He was having a little trouble breathing. And then the next day, I came in. I had gone back to his apartment, and I came in, and they had intubated him. And he was heavily sedated, so he didn't, I did know that he knew I was there. While he was, I'm sorry. Take your time. While he was in the bed, I had said to my dad, "Dad, you can go into the light." I whispered in his ear. He was under, but he cried a tear, so I knew he heard me. He died on Father's Day because I remembered that they asked if we wanted to take out the tube, And we said yes. And about 4 hours later, he passed, which was on Father's Day. That was hard for me. Couldn't leave his side. And before he passed, I kept watching the monitor. And the monitor, when you take out the tube and they start to slowly, their breathing gets labored, you see the monitor go up more slowly. And then you see the line. And you know, to this day, I can't see any kind of thing with that when the line goes dead and it's flatlined. We had a little service for him, and then he was cremated. And I got some of his ashes, so he's always with me. But that was probably a hard one.
Very recently, it was at a comfort care home called Serenity House in Mooresville. And the woman was in her 70s, I think. I never really pay much attention to how old people are because it doesn't really matter. People of all ages die. And the other volunteer who was with me is a younger volunteer and just out of college. And when I came on my shift, I was told that the resident was exhibiting some signs of impending death or the final period. So we sat with her during that time, and we were able to calm her down. Her breathing was rather rapid, and we were able to calm her down by stroking her forehead. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but I was in the hospital once recently, and a friend was there, thank goodness. And just this, someone just lightly doing this is so calming. I think it probably brings us back to when we were little babies or something. But she's calmed and her breathing became more smooth. And we sat there and we were each holding a hand. And she just tightened on the hands. And then the hands relaxed. And the other volunteer looked at me, and I looked at her, and I said, yeah. And I'm sorry I didn't bring it today, but I wrote a poem about that. Because it was really beautiful how she calmed, and then I describe it as chose to let go of her failing body at that point.
That was my mother's death. I was 15, and even though I saw my great-grandfather's death before, really my mother was the one that changed everything. And actually before she died, I thought she might get better, and then it didn't. So that would be.
How did she die?
Cancer, and she died at home, so we saw the process. We were there, everybody was there. And we took our time to sit next to her. Actually, I was helping her to clean all that you're supposed to get out of her body. Mm-hmm. But even by that moment, I thought, I used to believe in miracles. And I thought maybe not by tomorrow they tell me she's fine, but no. So that would be the one that changed it. I remember that we were supposed to talk to her, but I didn't know what to say. I just looked at her and she looked at me and she couldn't talk. So she just cried. So it was kind of awkward because you say, you know what I'm supposed to say. So that was it. Then I think I went to the other room to do something. And then my father told me that she just left.
Guess going back about 37 years ago, I was working and I would drop off my kids at a babysitter's house, and she had a 1-year-old, or going to be 1-year-old, and she was 8 months pregnant. And she was ready to have another one. And I'd go to drop the kids off one day, and there's a note on the door saying that her son was rushed to the hospital. That turned out that he died I think a month before his first birthday. That really hit me very hard. I never seen a child in a coffin, a small one at that, and it was difficult. It still brings up memories, but it was difficult to see a child in a coffin. When they were wheeling the coffin down in the church, her and her husband were walking behind the coffin, and her being pregnant. And I remember thinking I couldn't imagine how she felt losing an 11-month-old, ready to be a year, and going to have a baby the following month. I just couldn't fathom. And I do remember being very upset. I do remember that the day was really crappy. And I never seen them again after that.
Oh, really?
They were kind of like staying away from people they knew. Because I don't think I could have seen them without getting upset. And I remember thinking that they don't need any more heartache. They had enough.
My mother died when she was 52. And I was out of college. My parents lived in Pennsylvania and I was in Vermont going to grad school. And, you know, I got a call that my mother was sick, you know, but everything was okay. So I went down to visit and I was told that, oh no, she's sick, she's going to be better. And then like maybe 4 weeks later, I got a call that my mother had died. And I was devastated. Not only at the loss of my mother, like so suddenly, but the fact that I'd been lied to, basically. And after my mother's death, nobody really talked about her. You know, it was like, just like all those other relatives that had died in the past. And I realized, actually I didn't realize, I went through personal issues, like got divorced, moved, I mean, and I went to therapy and the counselor goes, you know, have you had, you know, are you under stress, any major things happen? And I'm like, oh no, I'm fine. And when she found all that out, she said, you never dealt with the loss and grieving process for your mother. And so you were just shedding things that may hurt you in the same way. And I was like, oh my goodness, you know, there has to be a better way to deal with this dying process and letting the family know. And that is what led me into reading about hospice.
Well, I think because death has been removed out of the home. I think before everyone experienced death in a very personal way because they had to handle the body after the death. And so now that it's become more of a business, people are removed from it. And because it's a profit-making industry, I think that people experience death through a ceremony more so than through like remembering the relationship or thinking about what happens after that. It's more of like once the ceremony ends, then the memory of that person, of course, lives on, but the physical body just goes into the ground and it's removed from our minds and it's removed from our sight. And so I think because it's removed from our sight physically, that we don't talk about it because we think it's just in the ground. Yeah. We don't think about what happens after that. And I think that that's what I'm still uncovering, like what happens after that. Mm-hmm. And what do I want to happen for me, or what do I want to be true for me, or what do I want to believe in thinking about the deaths of my parents.
My husband and his cousin, they each truly believe that when you die, when your body dies, that's the end. There is nothing. And I used to be talking to Suzanne and say, oh, I think there's something bigger in a part of you. And she goes, but will I know I'm me? Like after I die, will I still know that I'm Suzanne? And I said, like, no. She goes, well, what good is it? I mean, like, why bother? And it's sort of, I said, but yeah. So I think it's from fear fear of death and what might happen. And I also think it's a real strong attachment to ego as who you are in this life. It's like if I'm really strongly attached to Susan Andre and all that roles that I have and the things I own and all of that, it's very hard to imagine who or what you would be without that. And I also think our culture certainly doesn't recognize death as part. Most of the advertising is targeted to maintaining perpetual youth. Research is maintained to maintain perpetual youth. I mean, like, people are like eating well, exercising to live longer. I mean, it's just sort of like to try to prevent the inevitable. Doctors are trained to see death as the enemy, to preserve life to preserve the life in that physical manifestation, often not even considering what quality of life would be there for that individual. I mean, their body may be alive, but maybe they're no longer able to speak or eat or interact. So I think it's a cultural thing. Yeah. But there's this whole, it's a universal thing, fear of death. We have to, I think, give it reflection.
En la cultura en Ecuador, en la cultura indígena, tú compartes la muerte. Cada 2 de noviembre nosotros festejamos el Día de los Muertos. En el Día de los Muertos tú vas a rendirle un tributo y además a compartir las cosas que más le gustaba al muerto. Entonces llevan la comida favorita, las flores. Es casi similar a de México los altares. Sí. Y nosotros lo que hacemos es una bebida especial de frutas que se llama colada morada. Es morada porque viene todos los berries, blueberries, raspberries, todos los berries con piña y unas guaguas de pan. La guagua es una palabra indígena quichua. Guagua significa niña. Entonces, una niña de pan. Entonces, es una niña de pan. Es una guaguita de pan, una niña, que viene con los brazos como una momia, y tú metes una pequeña, ¿no? Entonces tú metes la guaguita, le vas comiendo por el brazo, la cabeza, en la colada morada. Entonces, no es ese miedo de la muerte. Bueno, para mí es como que la muerte es vida. La muerte es donde más se celebra, una celebración. Sí. Es un ritual, es un rito.
I like celebrating the Day of the Dead as a celebration, as a culture. Doesn't mean I believe they come back. And there's a lot of things I celebrate, like Christmas, because I like decoration, not because I believe all that. So just to make it clear.
So do you think, do you actually put an altar in the house?
No, but I've been planning. I want to do something well planned. I like to do it, but as a cultural reference. Not necessarily because I believe those things. Why? Because I think it's beautiful. I mean, it's like the cathedrals. Mm-hmm. It's an example that they killed the Indians, the Aztecs, and from those pyramids they built a cathedral. Yeah. So it's a reference of crime when you think about it. Or any culture that we admire, it's a reference that they commit a lot of crimes in order to build their power. But because it's a beautiful architecture, I like to get inside and see it. But if you think about it, I mean, all that gold is in the church and those paintings. It's because they kill people to take the gold. So, but it's beautiful if you see it. Yeah. As a cultural reference.
That's interesting. Cool.
So I like to make an altar, but I don't think that people is coming to watch the altar and say thank you. It's for you to see and say, oh, looks pretty, the colors, everything.
In my house, the only experience I had with church or with religion was going with my grandparents, honestly, to Mass and things like that. I remember my father told me a story about when he was 16 years old. He asked his teacher in Catholic school, he said, wait, so if someone is born in China and is a Buddhist, they're automatically condemned to hell? Sir, you might need to find another school. Like, it was one of those kind of situations. So I wasn't raised in a religious household. And I don't, saying that, I'm not like an arrogant atheist, because you run into those people who will pick battles. I see the purpose of religion. I definitely see the purpose. You go back to the Middle Ages when the plague's going around, or the Dark Ages, plague's going around. You just buried your mother and your father. You're trying to take care of your sister. You're living in hell on earth. If you have an idea, a concept of an afterlife, that if you do right and obey certain laws that you can get to, I can see how that's really rewarding. I really can. And I don't mean to knock it at all. Me personally, I wasn't raised in a religious household, first off. And what I have read, what I have looked into, it just doesn't click with me. And I'll be honest, sometimes I wish it did. Sometimes people will walk up to me on the street and be like, hey, Jesus loves you. Remember that. Like, you know what, I'm glad that you have that. I'm glad that works for you, but come on. What are the chances, right?
Different cultures understand it differently. Some people celebrate it. I know the Jewish people have what they call, I'm trying to remember, where you can only lay them out for 24 hours. Italian people, they make a real big thing about it. I know that, you know, they have big family, big food. You know, I think today now death is more of a celebration than it is a sadness. And I'm not saying that it's not sad, but for some people, it's a celebration. They celebrate their life. For others, I know that when I was growing up, my grandmother and grandfather used to tell me stories about how Italian mothers would jump in the grave as the coffin was being lowered to the ground. I don't think you're allowed to be around now but they would be like, oh my God, and they jump right on the coffin. I don't think you could do that anymore. Cremation seems to be a big deal. I guess different religions think of cremation as a sin, or that you don't do that. I guess it depends on the culture.
Yeah.
I really believe that, you know, everybody has a different outlook on it. I think that when I die, I would like my family to celebrate my life. And I don't want anybody wearing black. I don't want the color black at my funeral. I would like everybody in bright colors. I would like socks on my feet because I love socks. They have to keep my feet warm, and I don't want to wear anything that's matched. I want odd colors. That's me. You know, there's certain things I want when I die, and I don't want it to be sad. But my kids, you know, they're saying, I don't want you to die, but, you know, get real. I'm gonna.
Yo creo que cuando te mueres es un alma, depende cómo hayas sido y depende de las personas, te dejaron ir, cómo es el resto, cómo estaba tu familia. Porque hay personas que no les dejan. Para mí, mi madre se murió, no pude ir, no pude salir de Estados Unidos, pero yo hablé con mi mamá, me despedí de mi mami, le dejé ir. Regresé hace 3 años de Ecuador, fui a visitarle donde estaba muerta, pero no tengo ese remordimiento ni ese dolor. Por el contrario, mi hermana fue a Ecuador, pero ella no le dejaba ir a mi madre. Estuvo durante 2 meses sufriendo, llorando, mucho sueño, no podía levantarse, a tal punto que tuvimos que ir a una terapia que se llama constelaciones y hablar con mi mami. Entonces, esa es una terapia muy interesante. Se llama constelaciones de Helbellinger. Te sientas, ¿verdad? Y solo hay una persona que sabe por qué tú vas. Y solamente a ella tú le dices lo que ¿Cuál es el motivo por el que vas? Bueno, se supone que es la persona que te ayuda al grupo. Entonces hay varias personas sentadas alrededor y tú le dices, ¿puedes ayudarme? Entonces la persona te dice sí o no. Y si dice sí, tú ya sabes que solamente le dices sí, ya viene. Tú te sientas y las personas comienzan a actuar por medio de energía. La persona que era mi mamá, yo le agarraba a ella, le sentía, le abrazaba. Era para mí una sensación increíble de tranquilidad, de sosiego, de felicidad. Para mi hermana que estuvimos ahí, lloraba y lloraba y le decía que no quería, que no se vaya. Entonces mi madre le decía que es tiempo de irse y que le deje ir. Fue muy buena esa sesión y la ha superado. Ella es la que va a Ecuador y le ve, por ejemplo, lleva las flores a los lugares que le gustaba a mi mamá. Porque mami dijo que quería un árbol. Quería que le pongan las cenizas en un árbol. Entonces, un árbol muy bonito de la casa y se le visita, sí. Pero eso para mí es cómo tú le dejas ir. Porque si tú le llamas, si tú está bien, yo creo que el alma o mi madre, le llamo, le digo, mami, ayúdame, ¿qué es lo que puedo hacer? Dame dirección, dame una muestra, dame qué. Pero en cosas buenas, pero si estoy todo el rato, yo creo que tal vez no puedo tampoco todo girar a todo alrededor de ella. Ya mi madre, ya crecí, ya tengo, pero hay cosas que sí, que siento que ella es un ángel y que está ahí para mí. En cosas sencillas como decisiones o salir más temprano o de pronto, ay, gracias que... O mi mamá decía eso.
I think you just die. Yeah, and this is coming from a Buddhist perspective. I've been a Buddhist since I was 29.
Okay.
I think that's it. You just die, you know. And they say, you know, people go on, but I think they go on probably in the memory of those that are still living. And of course, if you've done something in your life where it stays permanently on the planet, then you're always in the memory there, whether it be in movies or you've done something significant like some kind of a sculpture or you were some doctor that, you know, created a cure or scientist or something like that. But no, I think that's it. I mean, I think you die and I don't think you go to heaven or hell or... I think that's the romantic side of death.
I think their body is dead, but their soul goes up to heaven. I really truly believe that their spirit is set free. And it's funny, I feel that when my dogs pass. I'm very close to my dogs. And I guess when I moved here, I had 4 dogs. They have all since passed, since I've been here, and I've gotten 5 more. But I remember thinking that when my dogs pass, or if I have to, you know, put them to sleep, they somehow reappear. So my last dog that I had to put to sleep because he had a stroke, his name was Sebastian, and every time I see a butterfly, I know that he's around, a yellow one specifically. I believe that when people die, somebody else has taken their place, especially with the dogs. I think when one of your dogs die, I believe that there's another one coming into your life for a reason. So I believe there's something about my father that smells bring back memories on my dad. A certain smell. Sometimes I'll go in the box because I have the change that he had in his pocket the day he was taken to the hospital, and I'll smell the Lucky Strikes, and I'll handle the coins in my hand just to feel him, and I'll know that he's there, his presence. I got some of the tools. So I know that when they die, they are around you somewhere, somehow. So I think that, you know, in the ground, your body's no longer, but I do believe that they go where they're supposed to go.
Yo respeto mucho la muerte sí le tengo miedo, pero pues digo, bueno, cuando va a llegar, va a llegar. Mi mamá siempre nos decía, no te pongas en el tentadero, trata de hacer tu vida lo mejor posible, no corriendo riesgos. Disfruta la vida y vívela al máximo cada día, pero no corras riesgos. Y eso es lo que he tratado de hacer siempre. Y bueno, respeto la muerte y sé que algún día va a llegar. Yo espero que, no sé, en unos 15 años me llegue, porque no quiero llegar a los 80 o a los... No quiero llegar ni 80 ni 90. Eso sí, no. Me gustaría paz, un accidente, se fue, ya. Sé que es un paso, un camino al que siempre todos vamos a llegar algún día. Simplemente, como digo, cada día disfruto el día como si hoy fuera el último. Mañana no sé si abra mis ojitos. Entonces, si hoy puedo bailar, tomar, pintar, cantar, hacer todo lo que pueda, lo voy a hacer. Que no es de asustarse la muerte. Pienso que es un paso que vas a dar, un túnel que vas a cruzar, una luz a la que hay que llegar y ya.
If you die, actually, that's it, you know. No, nothing else to worry about it. And of course, I don't want to die with pain. It's going to happen, and, you know, you go to sleep and you die. That would be nice.
I would think probably more than in other people's lives. There's a Buddhist practice where you experience your life. You experience the final moments of your life. You experience taking your energy leaving your body, your limbs being, losing your loved ones, losing the ability to speak and eat, and actually imagining your spirit leaving the body. So I admit that I do that practice dying. And I think, you know, now that I'm 61, I have always thought about my own death, but I'm starting to think more about, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. My father's still living. He'll be 91 in October. My aunt will be 94 in 2 weeks. So I know that there's people in my life, in my immediate family, who will die. And just the other day I said to someone, I go like, wow, you know, I'm starting to think which one of the siblings will be the first to go. And I was visiting a friend in Hilton Head, and she had just been thinking the same thing about her family too. So, and it's also, I would describe it as a good practice to imagine losing those things. In fact, when I would train volunteers for hospice, that was one of the activities we would do. We would have people write on little slips of paper maybe 6 things that they really value, how they define themselves, what do you value in life. So people would write like, oh, you know, like my art collection, my husband, my dog, my good health. You know, they'd write things that were tangible as well as intangible. And then we would go into a guided meditation. And in the guided meditation, we'd be traveling this tough path, and you would come to obstacles, and at each obstacle you'd have to leave one behind in order to continue. And by the end, you have left behind all of the things that you've just identified that you value the most. And by this point, most people are crying. But that's really what you go through when you die. You give up. You have to leave behind your possessions, for some people, your interest in the big world. Some people are very active on global. You give up that global participation, your national participation, your town, your friends, your family. Your possessions, your interests, your hobbies, they're gone. You're leaving behind your loved ones, your last loved ones, and then you're leaving behind, which is often for most people their true love, their physical identity. I used to describe it as when you're born, you come in and you're very tiny, and then your world gets bigger. You know, it's first your mom, your dad, your sibling, you know, so it's in reverse, like your world gets bigger, grows wider, encompasses more things, more interests, more concepts, and then the reverse happens until you return to where you came from.
Well, you think about it when something in your body doesn't feel good. Obviously, you say, okay, and you worry about it not so much because I'm going to die, but all the arrangement that you are supposed to have before you die. Because as I grow older, you learn that you're supposed to have a will, you're supposed to have a power of attorney, all those things that you never think about it. I mean, it would be nice if you just die and everybody let it go easily, but no, apparently you're supposed to do a lot of arrangement.
You can't dwell on it too much. You just got to do what you're doing. I mean, if you go all out thinking you're going to die the next day, living every day full throttle, it's a little risky. It's risky. You're not going to last very long. You'll have 2 weeks tops and then be homeless. You can't do that. You can't do it that way. You really can't. But you can't think too long term either. You can't sit and plan for 30 years in the future and not enjoy the moment. And I feel like that's the balance that most of us are dealing with constantly. You don't want to go too far on one side or too far on the other. But for me, personally, death isn't something I dwell on. When it happens, it'll happen. If it's in a week, if it's in 40 years, I will feel bad, not for myself dying, but because I know the people around me who know me, that, I mean, they will have to grieve. Dying's easy. For the person who dies, dying's easy. For the people you leave behind, that's the hard part. But I really don't think the idea of death really changes how I live day to day.
I think we wouldn't have children if we didn't think of a legacy, or we wouldn't create if we didn't think about a legacy, or we wouldn't put our stamp on something if we didn't think of that. A legacy, not necessarily like, oh, I want my son, for me personally, like, oh, I want my son to have these things, and that's a legacy. But more so, like, I just think that the better that we become as human beings, obviously that can be contagious and continue for years to come with the future generations. So the legacy would be more like, okay, what do I invest in the future? And how can I see things long term? And how can I operate now in seeing the long-term effects for a better society?
When people are dying, that is often one of the things they struggle with is, you know, what legacy are they leaving? Where have they made mistakes? What could they have done differently? It's a coming to terms with the life that they've led, which goes back, I think, to what I had just spoken about. I think when someone lives authentically and true to themselves, they have much less of that internal discussion toward the end of their lives. And I think the shift is, certainly for me, and I think for these younger generations it'll become even more so, is less a legacy of physical manifestations and more a legacy of having lived with kindness and compassion in their lives. That, yes, the money can provide, you know, support housing services for people who can't have it, but oftentimes a smile at a stranger that you're walking down the sidewalk can brighten up their day. Or if someone that you don't even know is having a hard time, just asking, are you okay? Is there any way I can be of service? Can make the huge difference in their lives. Just last night, for instance, I was at an event and there was a friend there, and she came in, she was pretty agitated. And, you know, I could tell as she was relaying it to me, she was starting to tear up. And so I just walked over and gave her a hug, you know. And afterwards, at the end, she said, Susan, thank you so much. That made all the difference. It shifted. So I think that legacies, I think, will become more and more about how we show up in the world and how we make the world a better place by the cooperation and compassion that we show, not just to other people, but also to the natural resources in the earth. And I know that may sound trite, or as my parents used to say to me all the time, it's so Pollyanna, Susan, you know, and it's just sort of like, no, I have believed that all my life and even more so now.
Bueno, yo dejo a mis hijos fortaleza. Decirles que todo se puede, que tienen que trabajar duro, que la palabra vale, que es importante, que tienes que aprender a respetar tu palabra. Felicidad, mucha alegría. Yo soy muy alegre, que todas las cosas se le vea también con alegría. Bueno, ya pasó esto, vamos, cambiemos, busquemos soluciones. No podemos quedarnos ahí. Eso es lo que yo les dejo a mis hijos.